This is free from beliefs about liberation, in particular. Free from all beliefs? Maybe. So, consider that people are inherently free. People are even inherently free to train other people through punishments and rewards. People are free, in other words, to influence behavior, like imposing inhibitions on others. Keep your fingers away from the hot oven, or only cross the street after you stop and look both ways to make sure that no cars are coming. So small punishments can be imposed if someone violates one of these rules. They could get shouted at or grabbed or something, some kind of behavioral intervention, right? Small punishments can be imposed to draw attention to the rules and to avoid more severe natural consequences. Someone doesn't have to understand the natural consequences to understand the rules. Here's the rules. You violate it, you get punished. They might not understand the natural consequences of why shouldn't I put my fingers on the hot oven or the hot stove or whatever, or the hot pan or something like that. They might not know yet, but they can understand, oh, every time that I reach for it, my parent slaps my hand and yells at me and says no, really, kind of assertively or aggressively. So punishments presumably would always be intended to promote the best interests of the one exerting attention and energy to impose the punishment. For instance, if a parent trains a child to avoid a certain danger, that is an expression of the parent's interest in a certain kind of relationship with the child, like with a certain level of well-being for the child being essential to such a relationship between the child and the parent. So they don't want you to burn your hand. They don't want you to run out into the street without looking. In other words, they don't want you to run out of the street and get hit. They just don't want you to get hit by a truck or a car or whatever. So attention is interest. Punishment, therefore, is a form of interest. Reward, of course, is also a form of interest. Further, the publicizing of punishments and rewards is also a form of interest. The energy involved in making several reports of a single punishment or reward may be much less energy than the energy involved in implementing a single punishment or reward. To talk about it, to tell stories about it, that can be much more effective than actually implement a particular punishment or reward. So in a way, we could even say that the communication is itself a little bit of a punishment or a little bit of a reward. It's definitely a directing of attention to communicate a story or a threat or a offer of a possible reward. So note that reporting something may be conducted falsely or in a misleading way. Reports don't have to be actually accurate. In fact, all reports vary in their degree of accuracy, their degree of precision, exactly how detailed is the report, exactly how accurate, all that stuff. So in advertising, like commercial advertising, people may advertise that a certain kind of activity is favorable, like an ad promoting that people go and spend money at a casino or buying a lottery ticket or investing in the policies of an insurance company. For instance, certain possible rewards may be exaggerated. An ad may not reveal that the insurance company is in financial trouble and may be very unlikely to pay on all of its policies and liabilities over the course of a certain period of time. The ad may present the company and a particular investment in that company as secure and safe and so on. They may not report, hey, we're considering filing bankruptcy. The people making the commercial probably wouldn't know that anyway. So the ad may not warn about the risk of inflation as it relates to that particular, investment product or whatever. It may not warn about a major lawsuit in which the insurance company may lose at a great expense to them and may be going out of business. Again, they may be soon to file bankruptcy, but do they advertise that on TV? Do they promote attention to that? No, they focus on trying to get people to invest in them, which would be contrary to it would be contrary to the idea of to the purpose of getting people to invest in them to say, hey, we actually are probably going to be filing bankruptcy in the next 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever. Like, companies don't promote that. They don't publish that stuff. They file bankruptcy and then the public find out. And most of the customers of a company and most of the investors even in a company would be surprised because they just haven't paid attention. And for a customer, it doesn't matter so much usually unless they're actually buying an investment product. But like when Kmart went bankrupt, well, people had already bought their retail items from Kmart probably didn't care that Kmart was going bankrupt. But when an insurance company is going bankrupt, that's a little different. So anyway, an ad may present an investment in the insurance company as if it is better in all ways than buying a lottery ticket. And that is what the people who design ads are hired to do, to influence behavior with emotional associations and, if relevant, rationalizations. Will the mainstream media, which is funded by things like insurance companies and real estate advertisers and casinos, will that mainstream media emphasize to the public the risks of the public doing business with those companies? That's just not what they're hired to do. If they did that, they'd be fired. So people are inherently free. They are free to punish and to reward and to indoctrinate or propagandize or advertise. Each capacity, as in capability, is a freedom. They are capable of punishing and rewarding and indoctrinating and propagandizing. That means they're free to punish and reward and indoctrinate and propagandize. So it's the same reality expressed in two different forms of language, two different patterns of communicating. So each capacity to influence the attention and language and emotion and thoughts and behavior of other people with a reward is a type of freedom. Each capacity to influence the attention and language and emotion and thoughts and behavior of other people with a punishment is also a type of freedom. Since freedom is inherent, it is not provided from others, like from governments or from churches. Of course, people can influence other people's capacity to perceive clearly and to thrive. People can influence other people's capacity to perceive clearly and to thrive. They can educate and train people to be clear. They can also mislead people and confound people and hypnotize and indoctrinate and so on. People may be trained to be easily manipulated, at least by certain influencers. Like they come to associate a particular commander with, a particular church or a particular organization, a particular political party, a particular government office, whatever they may come to associate it with viability, with value, with the right choice. So we're trained. No, don't follow what the Venezuelan president says. Follow what the president of Chile says. Why? Because you live in Chile, or whatever. So people may be trained to be easily manipulated, at least by certain influencers or manipulators, and people may be trained to be stressed about certain things in particular, to be cynical, to be unhealthy, to be healthy. All that's possible. To be poor, to be depressed, angry, afraid, aroused, excited, hopeful, any variety of things. People may be trained to perceive through those particular patterns, or to perceive with those particular patterns and fostering those particular patterns of experience. And in particular, these can be monopolized, as I mentioned before, that certain advertisers, certain speakers, certain figureheads, certain associations and organizations are the reliable ones and others are not. Certain ones, in fact, are particularly unreliable. That's how people are trained. We're trained to basically be prejudiced. So people may be trained to be dependent on certain psychological essentials which may offer diminishing rewards but severe punishments for withdrawing from particular behavior or psychological crutch. What I mean is, for instance, if you think of yourself, you identify as an American, then anything that identifies itself as American, you reactively favor. Oh, this is an American thing, so it's good because I'm American, and I'm good, so it's good because it's American. Or let's say you're Canadian and you identify anything associated with Canada as good. Or again, let's say you're Russian or you're Venezuelan or whatever. So you have these different immediate reactive associations as to what is like you, what is for you, what's your identity, what's the right thing for you to do according to the people who define what it is to be an American or a good American, or define what it is to be a good Canadian or a good Venezuelan or whatever. So the diminishing rewards thing is that it may take more and more of something to get even less and less of an effect. It can wear off over time. And withdrawing from the activities and the language even that a good Canadian or a good Venezuelan would use, well, there can be guilt and there can be social repercussions for those kinds of freedoms, those kind of independences. So discontinuing a dependence or a dependency can actually be quite a kind of a unappealing alternative, especially at certain stages of an addiction or dependency. In accord with commercial interests, systems may be put in place to promote certain kinds of diets, which may be metabolically detrimental, or at least expensive to purchase, beneficial to the people selling them and not so beneficial to the people buying them. In accord with commercial interests, people may promote certain kinds of healthcare services and products over others, like pharmaceutical interventions designed to efficiently interrupt and inhibit the functioning of the immune system, which is pretty much all of allopathic medicine, or most of allopathic medicine, let me put it that way. So people may be trained to rebel, but only to rebel through certain methods presented as legitimate or patriotic. Again, what a good Canadian or a good Venezuelan would do. Anything else, that's just not being a good Venezuelan or being a good Canadian. But if you are identifying yourself as a good Canadian, then you'll do the things, you rebel in the ways that a good Canadian would rebel. You would not rebel from being a good Canadian. You would just rebel in the way that a good Canadian would rebel. So people may be trained to focus on particular issues for arguing with others about. They may be trained, I'll get to some of that later, like should special education children be given twice the amount of funding that a regular child gets, or 3 times the amount, or 4 times the amount, or 75 times the amount? Like, what's the right amount of extra funding they should get? That's an issue that people might be trained to focus on and trained to argue about. If you're a good Democrat, then here's what you think. And if you're a good Republican, then here's what you think. And here's your rationalizations, and here's your, whatever, prejudices. So people may be trained that governments promote the freedom of all people. However, legal rights, including civil rights, refer to an artificial system of punishments. What governments do generally is punish. Governments also offer rewards, but in particular, governments punish. They run court systems which are designed for punishing crimes as well as punishing people who fail to perform civil contracts, like debt contracts. So violators of rights are threatened with punishment. Threatened by whom? By the court systems and their hired guns, their mercenaries. For instance, the inheritor of a wealthy estate is protected from the masses by the hired guns of the court systems. Their wealth is protected. Their property rights are protected by the hired guns of the court systems. They may also have some private security guards on the perimeter of their estate, but the court system also, if somebody does steal something from them, the court system will help them recover it, or help them find the person who stole it and punish that person. Even if they don't, recover the stolen item, at least they can cut off the hand or put in jail for 30 years or whatever. Um, the person who actually is convicted of doing it. And sometimes politically, a government just wants to convict someone just to warn people, don't mess with the wealthy people and their property rights. It may not be that the particular person convicted is guilty, but at least the court system will punish someone, and that person then serves as a warning to the masses. So the legal rights or property rights of the wealthy are not intrinsic. They're enforced and established and promoted by court systems. They're created through the governmental systems of organized coercion, which is all governmental systems. And the governmental systems of organized coercion can then legitimate the criminalizing of trespassing as a crime through whatever systems of propaganda, if any, or they just punish it. You can just have the private security guards. They raise their weapons and fire on people who cross the line. You don't have to announce the line. You don't have to put a notice. But if you put a notice, it tends to be effective. Like, some people will see that. It won't work so well for birds, but people can read, and electric fences, big fences, guards that say halt and shoot a warning shot or whatever, and then guards to just shoot people without any warning. Those are kind of the range of governments, the range of organized coercion systems. In simplest terms, the poor, which we could also just call systems of influence. So in simplest terms, the poor are provided the civil right to complain through government channels about how governments systematically favor certain people and certain interests over others. That's what civil rights are. All governments redistribute resources to particular beneficiaries. In particular, that's what governments do. They redistribute wealth or resources. Those resources are acquired through coercive taxation and confiscation. That's what governments do in general. Whether it's Venezuela or Canada or Arizona or Alberta, whatever, that's what governments do. People may be encouraged to, by like the mass media and culture and public schools and so forth, to debate over certain political issues. As I mentioned before, like how much more funding should special education students receive beyond regular students? This is a point of controversy. It's kind of like part of what it is to be a good Canadian or whatever, is to argue over these particular issues. Should special ed students receive twice as much as regular students, 4 times as much, half as much? Why? Or how much money exactly should be taken from productive members of society, the working classes, to pay to the unemployed, to unproductive retirees, and to unproductive people with various disabilities? Further, exactly how much should be spent to kill foreigners near and far? These are the kinds of questions. Now, I'm phrasing them intentionally in ways that will be unfamiliar and like shocking and awkward, or notable. These aren't the way that issues are presented. The issues would be presented more properly in ways such as, should we have a tax credit to rescue Canada from economics, a tax credit for new home buyers, or should we not have a tax credit for new home buyers? How should we rescue Canada from economics? A, B, or C? The premise that Canada can be rescued from economics by some political intervention, that's not to be questioned. Just which of the following multiple choice things, A or B, usually not even C, A or B, which is the right one? So, sometimes in the, what do you call it, you have a few different nominees, and then once the party settles on one thing, then it's either, for or against, and it's a binary situation. That's it. So notice that various groups of people may systematically answer these questions differently. Whether you're a Canadian or a Venezuelan or a Democrat or a Republican or a student or a teacher or a parent of a special ed student, whatever. So the ways that people answer these questions can depend on whether someone works in a particular field or has a particular circumstance themselves or within their family or a close associate. The disabled retired military veteran with no children may have a personal bias that's distinct from a couple of young working class parents with several children that are generally healthy, as to, should education be funded, should the military be funded, should retirement benefits for the elderly, should alternative energy be funded? What should be funded? Well, it depends. Different people answer different ways. And of course, are you a Canadian or a uh, Venezuelan or whatever? All that's all defined by other people. The mass media tells us here's how a good Canadian or a good Venezuelan will be, and they, of course, will be similar in some ways. A good Canadian and a good Venezuelan will be identical in many ways, and then distinct in a few ways, at least a few ways. So there's no such thing as an inalienable right. There are just various capacities, as in capabilities. These can change dramatically and quickly, such as in the very first few years of a child's life. Also, no two people are created equal. No two creatures are created equal. A cat is not equal to a elephant. No legal systems provide or promote absolute equality. All legal systems provide various kinds of rewards and punishments. That means they interfere or alter the existing balance of power, the existing inequality. They do something to alter the existing inequality to some other inequality. That's what governments do. That's what legal systems do through coercive patterns, through coercion, organized coercion. So while government propaganda may refer to a right to life for all people, governments are widely known to do things like conduct ambushes of enemy soldiers and to even surprise civilians with things like bombs and chemical weapons like Agent Orange. That might be enough to make some of the surviving civilians consider becoming soldiers. But the idea that governments honor a right to life for all people is kind of like name one government where that's a reasonable conclusion. In the case of the Declaration of Independence of 13 United States back in the 18th century, there was a reference to an inalienable right to liberty. However, in how many of those 13 states at that time were a slave owner's legal rights over their slaves established and promoted? The right to liberty did not extend to the vast majority of people, or a significant minority of people, or what? Well, within the jurisdiction of the United States, the right to liberty was enforced for certain people, male property owners, in certain ways. It's a certain kind of inequality that is kind of promoted through a system. That's what governments do. Court systems protect inequality. They do so using coercion and hired guns, such as deputies. Some people may argue that court systems should not do that. However, the argument that court systems should not do that was established and promoted by court systems to obscure the simplest realities of the nature of their operations. People are inherently free. People are inherently free to form court systems to establish and promote certain inequalities. People are inherently free to indoctrinate others about how and why those inequality-promoting court systems were established, and to dismiss and oppose certain explanations of how and why things were established. People are also inherently free to promote their own commercial interests, such as promoting certain kinds of foods and diets and healthcare services and investments. People are inherently free to invest their attention and resources in operating a business or being a consumer of a business, whether that business is a casino, insurance company, healthcare business, or a court system, and so on. People are inherently free. However, people are only inherently free to exercise their actual capacities at any particular time. In contrast, people are not free with the capacities of a bird or of a fish or of a cat. A bird is only free as a bird, not free to swim as a fish or free to be a person. They're just a bird. A fish is only free as a bird, not free to fly as a bird. Okay, a fish is only free as a fish. I'm going so fast. Not free to fly as a bird or free to be a person. Any creature or organism has only and exactly whatever capacities or freedoms that it has. However, no one else makes anything else free or makes anything else be what it already is. Everything is already inherently free, but only in the exact ways that it is already inherently free. The cat's free to ask me to let it out the door or to get it some food, but the cat is not free to open the door or open the can of food. People are free to claim that some people can make others free, as in set them free. A religion or a government or liberating, revolutionary propaganda, whatever. One can certainly act to restrict someone else's capacities and freedoms, then later withdraw the restrictions. Withdrawing active restrictions may be called setting free. But whatever it may be called, it is simply the discontinuing or withdrawing of a punishment or restriction or an enforced systematic coercive inequality. You are inherently free. This is not a advocacy of any particular political system or a criticism of any particular political system. This is just an acknowledgement of inherent freedom. We might even say a dissolving or a questioning of the belief in liberation. There's no political liberation. There's no religious liberation. There's inherent freedom. And to know this might be said to be religious liberation or spiritual liberation. It's not through an organized, a ritual or something. It's just when somebody gets it, then they get it. All right, that's called Free from Beliefs about Liberation.